Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by a visionary entrepreneur whose work is reshaping the future of space. Alex Fielding with me is the co-founder and CEO of Privateer Space, a company he started alongside Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak. Privateer is on a bold mission to build the infrastructure for sustainable space exploration, mapping and monitoring tens of thousands of objects, satellites orbiting our planet, and helping humanity better manage the final frontier. Alex has a fantastic career which spans decades of innovation. Before Privateer, he worked at Apple, led teams at Exodus and Cisco, founded and sold multiple companies, and collaborated with leaders across Silicon Valley and around the world on breakthrough technologies. Today, his focus is solving one of the most urgent challenges in aerospace, ensuring that the space remains safe, accessible, and open for generations to come. We're going to talk about him and the vision behind Privateer, what it's like to launch a space company with Woz, and where the future of space exploration is headed. Alex, welcome to the show.
No, thanks so much. I'm really, really glad you can make time to do this.
Thank you. Thank you. Likewise. Alex, let's start at the beginning. What inspired you and Steve Wozniak to launch Privateer, and why now?
I'll give you the rough thesis, and I'll just say I won't speak for Steve, but I'll say I'm a Neanderthal. I think in things in terms of very, very general terms, and I think that I've been in and out of the space industry my entire life. I actually started my career thinking I would go into satellite design, working at like Loral Space Systems, which when I was a kid, that was the SpaceX of their time in a weird way. I mean, I'm giving them more credit than they probably deserve, but it was a great time. But I was never delusional enough once to say that the time for commercial space is now. I always knew that was something further out in the horizon and that the economics didn't exist no matter how much our hearts are staring at the sky at night. And I spent 5 years at NASA, which, it's going to sound like a punchline to a bad joke, but it's probably why I married a therapist or one of the many reasons. And the thing that has changed is that I could look you in the eye now and say the time for commercial space is now. And I could have never done that before. The the fundamentals of why we decided it was critical that we start a business, or why we thought that there's an economic motivation as well as a motivation to see the space domain accelerate, is that we've seen other government incubated technologies hyperscale very fast, right? I think we all saw DARPANET and ARPANET become the public internet, and the next thing you've got the world that we live in today where trillions of dollars of commerce are online. Or we could look at GPS starting out targeting weapon systems, to the obvious apps of navigation, to the total non-obvious hyperscale of Pokemon Go and Tinder, and beyond. And we kind of asked ourselves the question, why has that not happened for Earth observation and the space domain? In space, I'm going to really oversimplify, but there's like 5 or 6 big economic drivers in space. There's the transportation and launch piece, which we could certainly say SpaceX and great companies like Rocket and others are becoming incumbents in that domain. Um, you could say the same thing for communication, right? You could give Gwen a golden medal for the incredible work on Starlink and the leadership there. And on the other side, there's GPS and navigating our world from space, which I think we could say that that's a public good and a service provided for us as members of planet Earth. um, and those economics are now known as a part of geolocation or location services. But then there's all kinds of other things that are in categories that up until this point have not had known economics. So I would say the one that we all have our hearts in is human space flight and safety and putting people on orbit to do science missions and that type of stuff. And then there's the type of stuff that I don't think any of us really as humans want to do, which is like weapons and war fighting. And it's things that in the Outer Space Act and treaties and the Artemis Accords and others, the Astra Carta, we have all sworn that we would not do. We would not weaponize space. And we all hope that we won't further weaponize space. But this should not be a domain of warfighting. It should be a domain of inspiration and exploration. And then there's this giant void, which is Earth observation. These are the satellites that traverse the Earth not to provide communications or navigation or human spaceflight. These are, things orbiting our planet that look at planet Earth. And up until very recently were how our nation states spied on each other. And we kind of looked at that domain and said, how do you take a domain that is designed to spy on one another and instead use that type of technology globally on a shared basis so that we can better understand our companies, our economics, our supply chain, our personal lives, our climate? How do we get this domain to unlock the way that the internet unlocked or GPS unlocked, or that now certainly transportation communications are unlocking? And that's been a big focus for us. Steve and I started a GPS locator company over 20 years ago called Wheels of Zeus. And at the time, there were only a couple thousand things on orbit in 2000. About half of those things were dead satellites. And we used to joke over milkshakes that, someday we'd be the first space garbage men and we'd ride on the back of the trash truck and put those things in a compactor, because space was already becoming polluted. Tragedy of the commons has occurred. We now have over 27,000 things on orbit that we track, and guess what? More than half of them are dead satellites and debris from us. These are not this isn't anonymous space debris. This is trash that we put into orbit. So I think that we see the unlocking of Earth observation and geospatial intelligence and geospatial AI as the domain that we see an incredible opportunity that we've never had before in. But if we don't keep space safe and accessible, we will never be able to scale this domain and unlock these opportunities for our planet and for our companies and for ourselves, where, this shouldn't be the domain of nation states spying on nation states forever. This should be a domain that really inspires us to do great things.
So tell us in a nutshell what Privateer does. Its mission, its commercial product. What do you guys do? I'm sure everyone's curious to find out about it from your perspective, as well as the entire company. Was what kind of space company did you guys create?
So, we see Privateer as a geospatial AI company. We see ourselves as a company that takes real time or near real time imagery and sensing of planet Earth that connect to applications and frameworks to help us run our businesses and our lives and understand more about our climate. And the first app that we launched, we have a platform we call Elements. The very first app that we brought to market is this app that you're looking at here called Wayfinder. Internally, we call it Space, and we have four kind of key applications, being land, sea, air, space, and then one that we don't do ourselves, but we partner, which is cyber. The Space app, Wayfinder, we brought to market in 2022. It was our very first application. And a lot of people saw this and said, wow, these guys are building Google Maps for space or something like that. All these little green dots are active satellites. All the pink purple dots are inactive satellites. And if I turn on things like rocket bodies and debris, this is a much more complete picture of the airspace. And you can go use this publicly, and people listening to this, I encourage them to go do it and tell us where it's broken. Please share your bug reports. Let us know if something doesn't work the way it should. We would love to get that stuff fixed. If you zoom in anywhere, and all these dots, this is not a simulation. If you zoom out, this is really what we have done to our near Earth space. So these are all, or the bulk of them, are inactive, dead satellites, rocket bodies, debris. And then you can see obviously the active satellites. Now, if you zoom in or if you click on any of these dots, it's all live data. This is not a simulation. And, to the best of my knowledge, we're the only ones that are doing this publicly and free. And if you keep zooming in, all those little dots have their data labels turn live, and then you can do things like paint the orbits of all the satellites. This is in real time. You can hit info and interrogate those objects and look at the orbital ephemeris messages, like the minute-to-minute tracking. You can download that tracking of any satellite that includes the last 24 hours with covariance at the click of a button. You don't need an account. You can do this for free. And I think a lot of people saw this and said, wow, they're building Google Maps for space. There's no way that they're going to make money doing that. They're going to be out of business very soon. And I would say they're probably right. If that was what we were focused on as a business, we probably would be out of business. Although, ironically, saying that Wayfinder is actually, or our space domain application is a standalone profitable part of our business today, which is really wonderful. What most people didn't realize is that we're not just tracking the satellites, and we're not just tracking their position, and we're not just doing things like, I'll show you an app that we released called Crow's Nest, which ranks all of the objects by conjunction risk. So the top 100 are ranked by the 3D probability of becoming conjoined. And that doesn't mean crash, right? It could mean that they're docking. It could mean, as you can see here, like GSAT. This was a launch today. So we can see that they're kind of sitting in the parking lot. Relative velocity, they've just been dispensed. They're not really moving towards each other at any high risk. We can also see things here on the top 100 that are moving a little bit faster. I'm not worried about Starlink on Starlink. I mean, Mike and Goldie know exactly what they're doing. And we've got, have had a wonderful relationship there for a long time. But for some of these on the list, and let's go look at things we would be worried about. One of the things that we do is like here's Corvus BC2 on Starlink. Relative velocity is 15 kilometers a second. If we zoom to the conjunction for this, it'll fast forward in my time clock, or you can flip it to UTC if you want. So this will be this evening for me. And if we zoom in, the little dots become bubbles that are kind of covariance times 10. So in a weird way, this is our uncertainty where we would want to maneuver an object with its risk, and then we can model and simulate, Starlink on Corvus. And we can interrogate both assets. So I don't know what Corvus BC2 is. It's active. It's one of our things. But we've got the NORAD ID here. We've got the catalog position here. And we also provide these things within Crow's Nest that are called conjunction data messages. So these are basically the telemetry and state vectors for both vehicles. And, if you click on any of the CDMs, you'll get the metadata that includes that. And you can download that at the click of a button. And you can use this to build a maneuver plan and get out of each other's way. And you can certainly use Wayfinder to model and simulate that. So this is one of the things that we provided to the space community where we said, hey, this makes a lot of sense. If you're going to scale a space economy, crashing into one another is not a very good thing to do. And also, we're not big believers in space extortionism. Like, I don't believe you should have to pay somebody to not crash in space. If you got on a commercial airliner today, you would not want to have somebody walk down the aisle and go, give me $10 and you won't crash. So we've done our best to keep Wayfinder and our collision avoidance and conjunction data messages free and accessible to a global audience. We've also done some really fun things in Wayfinder that I'll kind of show really briefly. If you zoom in past the satellites and to the ground, a big part of our thesis on building Privateer was that, for everything in space, there's an opportunity to look down at Earth with these objects that do Earth observation and, help us navigate the world and also help us understand what satellites with what sensors or cameras or what resolution at what frequency are already overhead. And some of that is knowing how many degrees off of nadir or off of perpendicular to Earth is that sensor looking, or how far away is that satellite to the area that you need to know more about on planet Earth? How do we navigate there? Is there risk? What is the cost or a cost estimate of a maneuver for a satellite, including risk to go and do the collect? And we think that this opens the door to opportunistic collect, which is satellite operators partnering with us to earn more revenue, sharing their data into our intelligence applications. So this is one of the four domains that we spend kind of time in. And we've also done some fun things here to kind of hint that much of our business, like 75% of our revenue, is looking down at Earth from space. So we've turned on things like detected fires, which in Wayfinder Public, what you're looking at is low resolution NASA firms data for the most part. And if you zoom in on any of these heat signatures, these little squares, it's kind of a call out to zoom in. And when you do zoom in, I mean, each of these squares is 30 meters. So unfortunately, it is low resolution, but it's very high polling frequency. So like this dark maroon color means that this is less than 1 hour old. So whatever is on fire here right now, very, very unfortunate California fire moving through a farm. If we turn off detected fires, we can see, unfortunately, somebody's lost a good portion of their farm. Thank goodness. Doesn't look like there's any houses that have burned there yet. But very scary. It's a burning fire. So we started to turn on some of these things, and obviously, also some additional shortcuts. Things like if you go to Please Look Up, you can see all the satellites above where you're at. I'm currently in Maui, Hawaii. So we started turning on these, alluding to the idea that a lot of the functionality and capability is looking down at Earth. And I won't bore you showing you the land and the sea and the air applications for tracking boats and planes and trains and production facilities and contract manufacturers. But a lot of this is, of course, reliant on data from space. And Wayfinder was a great way for us to open that up to the community and have a dialogue and learn more and more. We're also the official tracking software for the International Space Station National Lab. So if you want to know if space station's over your house, this is a great place to go to find it and see what they're doing on board, which includes things like, generally technology and medical research and fun things going on every day. And you can see that in Wayfinder proper. So so we really see ourselves as a geospatial AI business, but we acknowledge that about half of the data that you need to know more about your business or supply chain or commerce or global trade or insurance or financial services, a lot of business use cases in the mix, half of that is coming from space. The other half is coming from the ground with cell phones and connected car and GPS and other types of ground and aviation sensing. So that's a long-winded pitch. I didn't mean to make it a corporate pitch, but there's a lot of stuff that we're doing behind the scenes there on supply chain intelligence and ERP integration that are really exciting to us and are making a big difference.
Wow, fantastic. Some of the features over there, I haven't checked out the app in quite some time, and you guys definitely have added a lot of new things in there. I can't wait to just dig back in and play with it a little bit longer. So, um, it sounds like the commercialization element of it, the data, the mapping, the visualization, all of those things are fantastic. Um, and tell us a little bit about the journey, if you would, please. How, I know your background comes from tech and, NASA, but it's exciting to do a space tech company. I think uh, every kid wants to do something that is about space, and you are a lucky person who actually gets to do that every day. How did that journey start? What keeps you excited? What keeps you going on a day-to-day basis?
I love this stage of a company, from startup to what I would call like processizing things, where you get to a certain growth and scale, where there's now a step function of growth coming. I love this chaotic, crazy time when every single day I get out of bed and go, I wonder what's going to happen today. And whatever I guess, in my morning routine, turns out to very rarely be completely true. Like almost anything that could happen on any given day does happen. And there's a certain personality type where that would be incredibly, I think, anxiety ridden. And there's a certain personality type like mine where that feels great. I like and enjoy this stage where we don't have it all figured out. And we're learning and growing while we go, and we're breaking things and fixing things and, creating new opportunities on the fly. It's really fun for me. And the space aspect of it, being in a domain like this where I could, you know, to say it's nascent would be an understatement. We know that the commercial space domain or using our near space environment for commercial purposes is here. I mean, it's here now, right? You look at how many Starlinks are up. There's like over 8,000 Starlinks now. There'll be another 10,000 plus coming very soon. It it means you're far more likely when you look at space at night right now to see a Starlink than little green men. But it's also a wonderful, wonderful time to acknowledge that there's so much broken in space. I think of things backward. My brain is a little bit broken sometimes, so I always look for opportunities where things are broken or don't work well.
Did we
Excuse me.
go out to space sort of um, haphazardly? I
I
mean, we
I think
launched
so.
all of a sudden 17, 18,000 satellites, objects, debris. We just we just thought, is that kind of how it happened? How did we get here?
I think that there's always when you have a gold rush or where you unlock a new domain and that domain comes with certain economy. The space domain, I mean, it clearly started as an arms race, unfortunately. I mean, this is the least inspirational thing I think anybody could ever desire to go do something new in. So you look at things going, in our space race and up to the Cold War. What were we doing by putting things in space? We were proving we could do it. In a weird way, it was the worst case scenario for starting a new domain. But if you look at it from the perspective of commercialization, the space domain, there are so many things broken because the domain was not assumed to be commercializable when it started. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at our space law, which I don't want to bore everybody listening to this thing and talk about space law for more than 30 seconds, it's largely based on our maritime law. So we have notions in space of things like launching state versus nation state. Launching state might be where you literally launch your boat in the water. Nation state might be the flag of the captain on the back who's driving. These same things hold true in space. So our satellites have the notion of launching state, which is where did the rocket come from that put me in space, and nation state, which is who owns this thing's operating it, who's the captain. Um, you know, but it has things that are totally broken. So as an example, where you might know right away if you're on the ocean, somebody might call starboard on you. In space, right of way is not known. It's not known in a 3D environment. That's much higher speed, much higher pace, over the ground on Earth. Most of our space assets are doing in low Earth orbit are doing 7.7 kilometers ish a second. So they're probably around 17,500 miles an hour over the ground of Earth. So when a satellite in low Earth orbit passes you overhead, if it stays on that inclination, it's going to be overhead for you roughly 16 times today. It's going to circle the globe every 90 minutes. Most people think space is very, very far away. But, if you and where are you physically? Which state are you in?
California, Northern California.
So you're in Northern California and I'm in Maui, Hawaii. So we're like, call it 3,000 miles away or call it 5,000 kilometers away ish. Our space assets that we're talking about in LEO are on average no higher for sure than 500 kilometers, so about 300 miles. So you and I on this, on this podcast, we're 10 times further apart from each other than either of us is from space. That's, I think, to put that near Earth space in perspective and the types of things that we're interacting with today and where all this excitement and this, rush of economy is, it's really, really close. And it's going to change our lives forever. And what's the most exciting to me? We're unlocking this new domain for really purposes for good, things that are going to help refugees get out of a bad situation, things that are going to help us understand our climate and improve our planet, certain things about our supply chain globally and commerce that's going to change the way our companies build and scale. These are all really exciting things. And there's all kinds of very exciting things happening in low Earth orbit that are going to change our lives over the next 5 years in ways that are, I think people will look back and say, oh, it was obvious that that would occur. I think looking forward, the average person doesn't even know how much they're using from space, right? I think a lot of people don't understand how much broadband satellites are still in use, how much communication satellites are changing their life, how much imagery is coming from space or sensing coming from space that can help them in the event of a wildfire or an event or a flood or a storm or a climate event or an emergency. We use a lot of services from space, even settling financial transactions. I mean, there's many, many, probably 10,000s of petrol stations, gas stations where your financial transactions are being settled by space, by satellites. This is critical infrastructure to us, but it's going to get much more critical, much more embedded in our everyday lives, and we'll never be able to go back. And I suspect it'll be so ubiquitous and so fast. And I mean, literally the next 5 years, probably by 2030, things will radically change. I'm sure your phone in your pocket will be connected directly to satellites rather than to the towers that are backhauled on satellites. I'm sure that your car will know more about mobility and road conditions and traffic hazards and route planning and optimization. And this is not something, I'm not taking the easy way out and saying this is 30 years, the next 30 years, everything will transform. No, in 5 years, these things are going to become everyday parts of our lives. And because they're occurring at such an exponential rate of growth. And a lot of that's thanks to Gwen and SpaceX and radical reduction in launch cost and so on. But It's an incredible time for all of us to be involved in a whole new domain opening up. And I feel like this is like 5 years before the public internet was readily available. Like it feels like we're at that infancy where all of a sudden it goes from the people on the fringe that are like using CompuServe and a bulletin board service and trying to get online to a world where everyone is connected and you've got mail. And, now you can never put this genie back in a bottle that is the internet or the way that we communicate or social media or other things. These are for better or for worse. They're out of the bottle and you can't get them back in. The same thing is going to be true for space. And we're at that point where this is kind of CompuServe to AOL days. And we're just about to be, Amazon type scale days coming in the next 5 years.
Do you envision Privateer to be a platform in which it could open the doors to other entrepreneurs to build on top of? The talk of town now is, of course, AI. Everyone's trying to already building AI tools, AI apps, games, some small. Of course, we all know the big players, the usual suspects, as well as existing players like Microsoft's Oracle, Google. Everybody's working on that. But for young engineers or young entrepreneurs who are starting out, should they consider space? And if yes, what are some of the areas to look towards? Because it just seems to me that all the corners are pretty much taken as far as large language models are concerned.
I see Privateer as a platform business. Our platform we call Elements. And those elements, instead of being like earth, wind, fire, and water, are more like land, sea, air, space, and cyber, which we see as new kind of fundamental elements. Um, if you look at those with that domain focus, there is tons of opportunity for developers to develop on our platform, and there's more coming soon. And the thing that we do better than anyone else is we connect all the real-time signals and sensing all the way from subsea to outer space. So everything from sonar and radar to connected car to GPS to cameras on the ground to cameras and drones and planes all the way up to satellite sensing and imaging. And we do that in one place, which is really important because when we looked at the domain and we said, why do we have to do this as a business? Like, why is there an economic absolute need? There's maybe four fundamental things that are totally busted today in the space domain or in the geospatial domain. One, we are really, really bad as a space economy at transacting inter-nation states. So I mentioned we've got this nation state law thing. What does it mean? It means that we don't have a framework for automatically clearing transactions when I need to buy a high resolution image. Let's say that I'm a US platform like we are, being privateer, and we need a high resolution satellite image from a German satellite, as an example. And our customer might be a Japanese supply chain customer, and they need to see pictures of their factories and how many minerals are on the ground and how many trucks and trains and boats and planes are coming and going and these types of things. To do this today is really cumbersome. So we have no automated clearinghouse the way we do in the credit card industry for space data. So I think this is just broken fundamentally, needs to happen so we can scale. The second thing is that we looked at geospatial intelligence companies and most of them don't know anything about space, which is weird because I think most people think that there's a certain amount of spatial data that's coming from space. That would be like building Uber and knowing where all the riders are, like XY on Earth, this is the person who needs a ride, and not knowing where the cars and the drivers are. So we said that's kind of fundamentally busted. You probably need to know what area on Earth you care about and then everything available to feed that in one place. And you need to know how those satellites provide capability and from whom and where and how to get it readily and easily and accessibly. The other things that were broken is we're clearly at this precipice, as you say. AI is it's another genie coming out of a bottle at the same time, and she's never going back. And what does it mean for geospatial? It means that real-time images and sensors and signals that feed algorithms will likely become fully agentic to some degree, where you will have an interface that isn't just about knowing what the right question to ask is, but also, how you would devise the right answer to a really hard challenge that you couldn't devise any other way. You wouldn't have a solution any other way. And the last thing is that these domains interface each other. So they don't, we don't, yeah, we call the applications the elements, land, sea, air, and space. They're all overlapping. When you look at any position on Earth, there's data coming from all of them. And this is another area where I think we're excelling. We're probably the best. Actually, I would say we are the best, although it's hard to be objective, right? I mean, everybody loves their technology, and we love ours. So I think we're at that intersection of geospatial AI and actual sensors coming from the ground and space, changing the way we see the world and the way that we run our businesses and the way that we run our governments and our lives. What's the part that hasn't changed? Geospatial will remain for the foreseeable future a significant topic in governments and defense and intelligence communities, where we use this to know about our potential adversaries. And we also know it's so that we can look at our own facilities and capabilities from the perspective of sensing externally. So I think these are all topics that, you know, there are things that we have done at Privateer already at the very edge of, using AI for geospatial, that are already in our customers' hands. And that's asking a question about the world that you need sensing from space to provide an answer for. But you may not want yet another UI UX. You may not want to go into another application and sit there 24/7. You may want some agentic interface that's also providing you alerts about the things you care about, and also providing you a way to access these data or reporting on a regular basis, or connect to your ERP and supply chain on an automated basis, that change the way you operate your business from static to dynamic, or the way that you see the world from a snapshot in time to real time. That transformation's like right now, and it's very exciting.
Well, it all sounds very exciting to me personally as well. Of course, first as a fan of space, fan of Privateer, you and Woz, and of course as an investor as well. So, in terms of maybe new releases or any milestones or launches that we should keep an eye out for?
I think we're an unusual company because we're really four kind of companies that have merged together over the last 4 years, and we've been very lucky. I mean, not just lucky in terms of the opportunity that we have in front of us, but market timing. We've been very lucky. The market is accelerating exponentially, and the launch cost is going down dramatically. So we're now seeing additional capabilities going on orbit readily. When I look at the business, we've been very lucky that we've only been a company for 4 years. We've only been in market for three. We've more than doubled revenues year over year consistently for the 3 years, full years we've been in market. And we're going to do it again for the fourth here coming very soon. Um, I think that puts us in an enviable position. We're a thousandth the size of our nearest competitor. We're larger by an order of magnitude than our next competitor. Um, and we likely will probably close 2026 as, what people would call a unicorn. We'll have over $1 billion valuation at the end of next year. And that's just based on line of sight and revenue and a standard multiple and a good market condition. So I think the releases are on target with that. And we're going to see a trend, certainly, where our applications all utilize more AI, to provide an additional set of capabilities to our algorithms and inference that can tell you things before they become a thing. So that could be, there's a storm, and what's that going to do to my supply chain in a certain country? What could I consider as an alternative? How would I make it more efficient or resilient? What will this do for businesses in terms of business continuity or business on interruption? These are not sexy topics, but they're needed. And I think that we're in that bridge where we know the needed applications, and we're doing really well on those, especially across financial services and insurance and energy and oil and gas. We can't even guess where the Pokemon Go and Tinder and the fun stuff is. Where are the really fun applications that are coming for everyday people to utilize the domain better? But they're coming. I promise you they're coming. And from a company perspective, yeah, we're doing the stuff that's really needed, and it's tied to things that are great economic wins. The business, Today, and I'm sure we'll continue looking for other targets and merging with other capabilities to grow the platform. We are the only company that I know of that could provide near real time or real time intelligence that connects to disaster management software that we don't own, right? That's partnered, that enables developers to run on our platform to get access to all these data without engaging in 20 million contracts to go get cell phone data or satellite data. And I think I'll be the most excited when we get more developers on the platform.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for joining. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing Privateer's mission and vision. It's certainly inspiring for me to hear how you and your team are working to make space sustainable, accessible, and safe for future generations. And conversations like this remind us that the innovations happening right now in aerospace aren't just about technology, they're about shaping the future of humanity. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it and leave a review and stay connected with us for more conversations at the intersection of technology, innovation, and investing. Till next time. Well, thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
It
Thank
was
you.
fun.
Thank
We
you for
should do
having me.
another one.